All right. So your dad was a preacher and all that stuff.
Yep. He got a master's in almost a master's in education, and then he had kind of a crisis of decision making in those days, and decided he wanted to commit his full time to being a minister in the Churches of Christ. And in the 70s, they were really booming. It was a non-denominational movement. Really before the charismatic movement took off, that was kind of the hot brand of Christianity, was non-denominational, keep it simple type of Christianity. And but as time has gone along, it's kind of diminished in participation and attendance. So these days, the Churches of Christ tend to be pretty small. But it's the Churches of Christ, Disciples of Christ, Christian church movement all kind of comes from the same root of 1800s restorationism, which was an attempt to create some order out of the chaos of all the different branches of Protestant Christianity. And some of that manifested in the development of the Latter-day Saints, and others, the Seventh-day Adventists. And there are several big movements that came out of that time in American history, and the Churches of Christ were one of them. And they believed that they could restore the simple doctrines and practices of New Testament Christianity, and probably an oversimplification of at times of that world. So one of the recognizable hallmarks of that strain of Christianity is they just worship a cappella. There's no instruments. And the Christian church broke off of the Church of Christ around the turn of the last century, the 20th century, because they believed it was okay to worship with instruments. So then that created a new branch off of that movement. And then I think there was a third branch that was more quote unquote liberal, and that was the Disciples of Christ. So those have all evolved into multiple worldwide denominations, but I was in the most fundamentalist brand of that.
Were you allowed to worship with instruments?
Mm-mm.
No.
Nope. It was a non-starter.
What's the deal with the instruments? Like, what does that represent?
It goes back to the literal and simple way in which they interpreted New Testament Christianity, where since there is no explicit example of Paul and Peter and all the rest of the apostles bringing an external instrument into the worship, and how they just sort of spontaneously clustered together, and in those days the church was relatively an underground movement. So one could argue, well, they didn't really have the luxury of buildings or anything like that. They just met home to home, and then they had some simple things that they did. They sang, they prayed, they partook of the Lord's Supper, and then they did good works. And so that was an attempt to recapture that. But it really drew a hard line on some of these things. Like, not only, it wasn't just like a recommendation, it was like, no, God does not want you to have this. And those who do it are in rebellion against God. Ergo, they may be going to hell. So that was the first thing that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way early on. But I didn't fully deconvert until I was in my 30s from that. So I would probably describe myself more now as an agnostic rather than a hard atheist, but that was after a good 20, 30 years of pretty dedicated service to Christianity and the Churches of Christ, including pastoring a church for a number of years.
So you used to be a pastor?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yep, youth pastor. Yep, done it all.
You go from being a pastor to the editor-in-chief of Doomed and Stoned.
I know. How about that? Yeah, I don't know if I squarely fit into any world anymore, because I kind of just do my own thing. I've never gone in for the excesses of drinking and drugs. Not that I judge anybody for it, but it just hasn't been something that I found personally appealing. I don't have any tattoos yet, but part of that is just huge indecision more than anything else, rather than a principle against it. But most of those things you kind of get rolling on in your teens and early 20s, and for me, it was just like you weren't allowed to. It was against the religion. So, by the time you reach your 30s and 40s, then it becomes harder to just be as spontaneous about a decision to get body art. So it's been something I've been thinking about pretty long and hard for a while. But yeah, people like my editor from Chicago, Laura McLinn, she came and lived here for a little while she was in the Pacific Northwest, and we were roomies here. And she couldn't believe that like my house wasn't just like stoned out to the max, with all kinds of like, leaf paraphernalia and bongs everywhere and huge ass turntable with huge speakers. And it's like, well, I have been sharing this with a wife who's been totally into R&B, and she didn't really understand like my world as much. So, but now that I have the place to my house myself, maybe that will change if I don't end up selling the place.
Well, we got to get you a poster, man. We got those big,
I need help with decor for sure.
City Riff Revival posters.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've got 2 of them, and
send one to me. Yeah.
I mean, it's what is it? 4x8? No, it's a 6x4.
Yeah, I've got another room in the house. I basically turned the master bedroom into my studio, and I'm gradually getting it ready so that I can do some live streaming, and I want to do like some, weekend DJ sets or something. I don't know. I definitely want to do more live interviews and things like that, and then just have different rotating guests and co-hosts coming in. So I need a better computer for that, and that's what I'm kind of saving for right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
So is there a big draw around here? Like, are you gonna be able to get people to come to Eugene? Yeah,
it's gonna have to be primarily just patching them in through like Google Hangouts or whatever. Totally. But there is a pretty good number of bands that come through the area. Mainly small to mid-tier acts. Eugene could be more. We just don't have, like, we're a big college town, but most of the college kids aren't into metal right now. This is a time in this generational cycle where most of what they've been exposed to is rap, R&B, and primarily electronic, EDM music. So I think it's not for a distaste of stoner doom. It's just a lack of exposure. I'll run into 1 or 2 students every year that it's just like they're totally into it. They even know about my blog, and that's always kind of encouraging. We'll collaborate on some local projects, but we have a few venues in town, and depending on who the local promoter is working to liaise between bands and the venues, we'll get some really good bills coming through here, and they'll just add Eugene on their stop doing the West Coast, which is really nice. But as far as turnout, it's a challenge. I think partly an awareness issue, and 2, it's just like not knowing what to expect. Like if you are aware of it, that's one thing. If it sounds interesting to you, that's another. Going out to a show is another level of commitment that I've personally struggled with. So I know what that's like. And I've talked to other people who've struggled with it. And, how much of it is indicative of just how insular we've become as a society versus the local culture, I'm not sure. But my sense is we have more and more reasons to barricade ourselves in our homes and not go out if we don't have to, and then to communicate with people through the internet. and it becomes a safe distance. We can kind of control the environment. We can stay comfortable while also fulfilling some social needs. And so if you haven't actually experienced it, you don't know what you're missing, and it's a lot easier to say no. But if you can actually get a friend to come out with you to a show, they're totally sold on it and they'll do it again.
Yeah. And that's pretty much what we're trying to do with this, hey, look, these shows are awesome. There's nothing like whenever we played with Sacred Trees. The first time I played with Sacred Trees at the Kenton Club.
Yeah.
Rotal was supposed to play with us, but the drummer got in a car wreck.
Wow.
So it was us. Turn off the phone. It was us. Menon. So Ethereal Sea, Menon, and
when was this?
It was probably February of 2018.
I'm sorry I missed that.
Yeah,
that sounds absolutely amazing.
But it was a good show. And when Sacred Trees got up there and they started playing a couple of their songs, I'm a big Sacred Trees fan. And you could just feel the energy. There was something that was
absolutely
there. Really, where like when you see a ghost.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you see a ghost and like the hair stands up. It's like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I compare it to I went to what was it? Assembly of God. So I went to Assembly of God Bible camp for a week.
Yeah.
And you would get that the spirit or the group think when everybody's thinking the same, their energies kind of combined. You get that wave of energy that goes through, like everyone connects together. And it's the same thing at a concert. Whenever someone's playing some music and people are really into it and they can feel the energy, it's like it's the same thing.
Yeah, it really is. And part of it comes from the crowd, and a big part of it, I think, with our scene comes from the music, because it can connect with you. You feel it. Like I remember a now defunct venue in town was kind of based in a downtown house. It was like a house that had been converted into a bar / stage. And it was just a very, very small venue. I think they even call it a Tiny Tavern. That was it. So at Tiny Tavern, we had a number of different Stoner Doom acts come through. And I'll never forget the one time, who is the band out of Seattle? Starts with an S. The problem is I have so many bands rocking through my head. One of the guys is from Oklahoma. They've played Roadburn before. They're a doom band. I keep wanting to say Sour Vein, Suproth. My problem right now is I can't tell whether I'm losing my memory or whether I have too many damn band names going through my head.
It's probably the band.
But it's frustrating as hell, Samothrace. Yeah, so there was a band called Samothrace that came in to the Tiny Tavern, this really small venue, and it was maybe the second show I'd gone out to locally in town. The first one was Yop playing at the historic Wow Hall. I made the mistake there of getting right in front of the loudspeakers and Mike Scheidt's big ass amps, because I wanted to be right there to hear Burning the Altar, my favorite song from them. And I lost my hearing for damn well near 2 weeks after that. So I was sure I didn't want to make the same mistake, but this was such a small venue where I saw Samothrace that you really had no choice but to be up close. And there was actually a couch right there seated near the bar right in front of the stage. And I sat down there and I could feel the reverberation of those deep, dark tones, just like shaking my insides, rearranging my organs. And that bodily experience and connection to the music is like nothing you'll get in any other form of metal or rock. Thrash makes you want to get up and move around, partly because of the crowd effect. But doom metal is something that's very personal. And that's what I love about it. It's like the first time I saw St. Vitus at Roseland Theater, I was there to see Down. St. Vitus was opening for them, as was Crowbar. I knew about Crowbar and Down. I knew nothing of St. Vitus. And I left with St. Vitus as my favorite band and an awareness of something called doom metal, because it was just so powerful. It wasn't overstated. It was simple, but those deep, dark downtune tones and the way you could feel the music in your body, coupled with lyrics that were very relatable, that talked about life as it really is, that made me an instant convert to the genre. And that was something that only could be gained from a live show experience.
Right. Yeah, I just, started listening to a Yob recently, because I'm not originally from here,
Yeah.
So I come here and I got to dig in all the bands and see who's what. But Yob, you can just listen to it and like it sounds good on the stereo, but good and well if you're in the sound is going to just blow you away in a live like theater or room.
Yeah.
Just you can tell I don't know what it is.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but over time, like I went from using earplugs to not using earplugs. And I don't know what happened to my hearing. I don't feel like my hearing is any worse than it was before. I feel like it's more attuned to the lower frequencies. The treble will absolutely like mess with my hearing for weeks, and I just instantly have to put something in there. But those lower tones, and I think just the fact that people in the stoner doom world know how to do a live show,
Yeah.
It's allowed me to really experience the music, even not that I advise not using earplugs, but for me, my hearing is totally adjusted to it, I used to be disappointed going to see really big acts and their sound would just get swallowed up in these big stadiums, or they would sound nothing like their records, which isn't always bad. But in this case, it was just off. It just felt like it made me question just how good they were as a band and whether they'd been overproduced in the studio. But when I started getting into the stoner doom world, I realized these are people who really are fanatical about live sound just as much as they are about the recorded sound. And each are almost sometimes a unique and essential experience to have. So going out to a live show is going to give you an experience with that band, with the songs you love, and with others who enjoy the medium in a way that cannot be replaced by watching it on the internet. Even watching some of my films on the internet will not replace that live experience. While you'll see some things and you'll hear some things, you won't feel it the same way. You won't experience it the same way. So my hope is that people will be inspired by Doomed and Stone, not only my films, but my writings and my interviews, and will want to get out and be a part of the culture. And if there is no culture, create one, because all it takes is one good experience and people are going to come back for another one. And, taking the extra step to actually introduce yourself to the people around you, making them feel welcome and just enjoying it together. You don't have to get to know people really well, but at least get to know people's names. And then the next time you see them, it will be that much easier. And then before you know it, you're an accepted part of the scene.
Yeah. I'm going to stop it right there. We're about to run out of time. That's good stuff.
It's perfect spot. I'm going to run up to the car and grab something.
Why is this thing stopping?